Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Trail Charge Podcast. Garrett, Jason, John here, and we are with a coach. We are with an ultra runner, and he is a badass in all of the above. And we are with Ryne Anderson. So thanks for being with us, Ryan. He actually was on my old show in my previous life. So thanks for being on the show with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
So it's been a minute. Been a minute. Hell, I can't even remember how long a minute it's been. It's been a couple years,
I
I
think
believe.
it was like December 21, I think, or January 22.
January 22. Yeah, it was
Hmm.
around the first part of that. So it's definitely been
Hmm.
a minute. So catch me up a little bit. What all have you been into since we talked last? I mean, you definitely have hit some races and whatnot. So what all have you gotten into race wise?
So since when we talked last time, I was just starting working with CTS full time. And so that was just taking off. And now it is very much full-time job, in which I'm extremely grateful for to call it my full-time job. And then let's see, 2022. I raced the Bear. I don't even know if I raced anything else that year. Oh yeah, I raced White River 50, which is in Washington. My mom and sister live out in Washington, and they're like an hour from there. And that's the fourth time I've did that race, and it's an excuse to go visit them and then do that race each time. Um, and then yeah, ran the Bear. That went well. And then the end of 2022. I got an overuse injury from Hellgate. And then 23, this past year, I got really into cycling. And as yeah, we were kind of talking before about the bikes, and did a couple gravel races. It was really fun to just go into a new sport and be a noob again as something as like fun and frustrating as that is, like figuring out bikes and all the mechanical stuff is it's a lot, but then just a different way of training. And I haven't went down the YouTube rabbit holes of ultra running stuff in years, and then just all the time on YouTube with like the cycling stuff was fun. And yeah, and then yeah, this year I'm running Hard Rock. I got in
Woohoo!
4% chance. I put in for the first time in 2018. I ran Bighorn as my first qualifier in 2017, and then Grindstone in 2019, pre-UTMB Grindstone, and then the Bear. Uh, so yeah, and then yeah, training, having fun.
So
So,
what's
so
the
when
so
let me cut in here because I got to ask. When you got that notification, was that a "oh shit, I got in," or was that a "oh shit, I got in"? Like,
Oh man, it was both. So I was sitting, I was sitting at the trailhead about to go run the Rich Mountain Gravel, which I like to run a lot, right on the edge of the Smokies. It was raining, it was cold, it was a gray day. I was in a pouty mood. I didn't want to run. I was like, yeah, well, I'm here. And then you have service in that spot, surprisingly, and the lotteries were going on. I was in the Hard Rock lottery. I had athletes in each of the lotteries. So like I was just hitting refresh, and then boom, I saw my name, and I just like, what? Started screaming. And there was like other people at the trailhead next to me, like, what is up with this guy? Um, and then yeah, I was just like, this isn't real, right? Because I only had a 4% chance. I've had so many friends that it's taken them 10 years to get in. Chad Womack, Brian Costello down in Chattanooga. It's taken people so long to get in, and I was totally fine waiting my turn to get in. Like I didn't care if it took 10 or 12 years. The more experience you get, the better before going into that. But yeah, definitely like oh shit, this is scary. This is awesome. And then like you guys know and talk about it on this podcast, like the ultra running community is so awesome. My phone was blowing up with just people reaching out and saying like, dude, you got in. And like that was really cool to just like everybody's watching those lotteries and then for them to reach out immediately like that, that was a pretty neat part of it.
I mean, that's like I mean, you don't want to sound dramatic, but I mean, that's really like almost like a once in a lifetime get in if
Uh-huh.
you're not like a high level, super elite type of person,
hmm
because
hmm
it's so hard to get into. But let's rewind a little bit because there was a whole lot to unpack. Let's start with the cycling thing because it was interesting. So, how much different is the training for like cycling compared to like what you have to do for like ultra running?
I'd say the main thing is the recovery is so different. You can just do so much more on the bike. You can do more intensity. You can do longer days, and you just recover because you don't have the impact. Yeah, there's still torque through the knee and everything. I think that's always important to remember. People like, oh, just go ride the bike. Everything's fine. You need like a proper fit. You're still mashing the pedals. Like you can still get injured on the bike. But yeah, just like the amount of training you can do and then like doing interval workouts and like you're sitting there and you can just pedal so hard. And I it was really neat to learn just like how much harder I could push myself because in running, you just get to a point where like the impact, everything is kind of stopping you from going any further. And of course, there's still the fatigue and everything accumulating on the bike, but it was just crazy to go so hard on some intervals and then like the recovery to the next interval is like, oh wow, I can't believe that. So the recovery, whether it's like within a workout or over the course of training, I'd say that was the big difference.
Have you seen a big correlation in how the cycling is benefiting your running? Because I know that I think you'll start to see it a little bit more as people start to, I don't want to say come around to it, but I know Seth Ruling is big on the bike. Heather Jackson, I don't know how she does it. She'll go run, what did she run? Javelina. And
Yeah.
then the next week is racing a gravel race and podium on the podium for that. I don't know how she does that. That's just blows my mind.
Mhm.
But have you seen a correlation in how it's benefiting your running going forward, having done it for essentially the last year? Almost, I don't want to say exclusively, but pretty heavily.
I think if I was mainly a road runner, it wouldn't have it would have been a detriment because with road running, your efficiency, your gait is so important. And if you don't run for 7 months, that stuff goes away, which like that's pretty much what I did. I was cycling for 6 months. I would run every now and then, but it's like I'm having fun on the bike. I want to keep riding. Um, but you get like your quads get really strong from all the climbing on the bike, and then boom, you go run up a hill, run up a mountain. The range of motion through your hips to knees is similar-ish, right, to running uphill. Things get shorter. So I would say the biggest carryover is I'll hop on the bike to just spin easy and recover. And I'll ride the trainer inside. I'm pointing it to it behind me. And just like there's no hills to get up, there's no Strava segments outside to like try and race. Like I can just hop on that and spin really easy and recover. And that's one thing I've noticed. But um, whenever I was transitioning back to running in the fall and winter, I was very curious what it was going to be like. And honestly, I didn't feel like I lost any trail running fitness. I still felt really strong. So that was cool.
I mean, I can imagine that probably all. I mean, it definitely probably correlates a little bit. I know, um, I don't know if you. I'm sure you do, but you know, Jason Lloyd in Nashville
Mhm.
is a huge cycling guy. He cycles and he runs, and he's gotten faster as he's aged, which is not very normal because I'm old. The older I've gotten, the slower I've gotten. It's like he's went reverse, and like he's gotten faster as he's gotten older, but he cycles a lot, and I definitely think it definitely probably has some improvement. I'm no scientist or anything like that, but I was just curious, like, and I think you broke it down pretty good about the difference of the recovery is a lot different because like in running, it seems like if you go out and you put in a hard effort, you definitely need like some sort of recovery to it. Especially if you're like you primarily run, but like I guess with cycling, I guess all you have to do is just dial it back a little bit, and you can still kind of cycle is basically what you're saying. And I've never ridden a bike. I don't trust myself on a bike in traffic. Don't laugh, Garrett. I don't. I don't.
I'm laughing because I bike to work once, and I'm getting ready to start again, where I'll bike one day to and from. It's 21 miles one way, so 42-mile round trip, and it's just a fun way for me to get some additional training in. It'll be on a day that I don't run, obviously, but it's just fun. I like cycling. Sorry, I like cycling a lot. So yeah.
Biking.
Yeah, Vikings. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Sorry to the cyclists out there that may listen, and sorry to the bikers who might listen. You know what I mean?
So so curious, did you watch the Tour de France documentary on Netflix?
Yes, yes.
Was
Highly
that
understand. I've
not the
watched it
most
multiple times. Yeah.
that's one of the most intense things I've ever like it was just wild to me. I had no inkling of how deep strategy is in like an event like that. Like like who was the guy that that just a monster? Walt Van Aert.
Wow, Van Aert. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean that dude I mean, he was fast, he was strong, and like I can't remember that race where he just like carried that guy up the top of that mountain and then basically just like gave out
And then died.
once he
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. It's
That's just
yeah, that documentary, if you're not a cyclist, if you just appreciate sport, you will enjoy that. It's yeah, just team dynamics, solo dynamics, working hard, recovery. Yeah, it has all the things. And then if you like that, I would highly recommend watching the Call of a Lifetime series on YouTube. That's it highlights the Lifetime Grand Prix, which is a mix of gravel and mountain bike races throughout the US, and that's very entertaining.
Yeah, and then
def-
the other one is the 30 for 30 with called Slaying the Badger with Bernard Hino and Greg LeMond.
Mhm.
yeah, I've been meaning to watch that one, John. I've got ESPN Plus and I never use it. I pay for it and I never use it. I forget to even have it. It's there. Don't ever watch it,
The 30 for
so
30 series are usually really good. You should
Yeah,
definitely check those out,
almost any 30 for 30 is going to be worth your watching. Just they're very, very good.
including the one about the Baltimore Colts marching band.
they had a marching band?
They still do.
Really?
Yeah.
No idea. That's interesting. So so I guess we at least got to talk about the bear a little bit because John, you are signed up for the bear, right?
I am signed up for the bear.
So so how hard is the bear?
I mean, it's a
What is
mountain
John
100
getting himself
miler.
into here?
Oh man, like no, John, you did a lot of 100 milers. You're about to go out and do Hellbender again. Not to be flippant about a mountain 100 miler, but it's still 22,000 feet of climbing. It's smidge at altitude. Nothing crazy if you go in there fit and you're just not anemic or have prior issues at altitude. But if it's not muddy, those trails are they're pretty nice. Like what we're coming from, you're running the Smokies up Boat Mountain.
About to say
There's
that's not like Boom Mountain.
no,
Yeah,
no.
man.
There's maybe I don't know, no more than 10 miles of that. It's a lot of two track, it's a lot of metal single track. It can get pretty muddy. I was fortunate to not deal with the mud. But I mean, yeah, not to be flippant about a mountain 100 miler, but if we're gonna, let's say, scale 1 to 5, Hellbender's a 5, I'm not going to put a number of the bear, but it's below it.
Oh
And then
wow,
I'm
really?
speaking about the terrain. Just the terrain is so much easier. So long as it's not muddy, the terrain is a lot easier.
What about the back half of Hellbender? Because John didn't get to see the back half of Hellbender.
The back half of Hellbender, let's see. From the
Supposedly that's the
church.
more runnable section
Yeah,
with
that
more
is
like
like
Okay,
good
you
roads
got
and
you should be okay
gravel
then.
to Curtis Creek. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, like yeah, the first, what is it, 45 or 50 miles of Hellbender to the church. So gnarly because you climb up Mitchell, the Crest Trail, you do Snooks. It's yeah.
Man, I just remember when we were waiting for him at Mount Mitchell and the
Hmm.
hailstorm blew in and
Uh-huh.
then blew out just for him
Uh-huh.
to run down into it. And it was like, well,
Yeah.
sorry, Charlie.
not just run down into it, but go down the crest trail in it.
No.
Yeah, that it and it was funny because Garrett and I was talking to race officials and they were like, "Yeah, the Trail is already difficult on its own, and it's like you put this weather on the Crest Trail, makes it like takes it to a whole nother level of like difficulty."
Yeah, was that part of the Heartbreaker course that you ran?
I did the 55K and it was not, and I don't think it was a part of the 50 mile as well. But to be clear, not being flippant about the bear. I don't want people to think like again, mountain 100 miler, it's tough, but just comparing the terrain and what we're used to, it is not that. It is not Appalachia.
For sure, yeah. I mean, that's still months away, though. We haven't started thinking about that. Hellbender's in 19 days, so
Mhm.
that's what's occupying my mind right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, John has a he wants his revenge at Hellbender because he had some really rough he had some really rough weather that put him behind the eight ball. So, and it's interesting because you talk about the terrain difference, and we had Melanie Harsha from Hoka on, she did the Triple Crown of
That was a good
hiking,
episode. I like that one. Yeah.
and she said the same thing you said about the terrain difference between she was talking about how much harder the AT is compared to the PCT and the CDT from the standpoint of you've got the leaves, you've got the roots, you've got the rocks, you have all that. And those western trails are so much more I guess the word would be clean because you don't have as many obstacles in your way, because that to me is one of the worst things about running on a trail here is running on wet leaves and not knowing what's underneath the wet leaves. And I'm sure you guys see that all the time in the Smokies, um, all the time. So, so the difference between you and John, do you, John, are you just trying to run all the different trails in the Smokies? Because I think Ryan, you said you like the outside of the Smokies. Is that right?
I kind of let's see. Me and John run a lot of the same stuff around Tremont and before you get to Cades Cove. Coming from Knoxville, that you can get there pretty quickly, and then um, just if you know which trailhead to go to and which trail to get on, there's not a lot of people. Um, like Allen Cave going up Mount LeConte is amazing, but the traffic, all the humans, it's too much. You have to go during the week and leave at 4 a.m. if you
Yeah,
want to
day
enjoy
before
that.
sunrise.
Yeah, yeah. But then Big Creek and Cosby, which is closer to North Carolina, kind of the same thing. It's like 20 more minutes of driving, but you know which trail to go on. A
Yeah,
mile from the trailhead, you're seeing nobody.
yeah,
It's the
it's
most
funny you
visited
say
national
that.
park, but if you know where to go, you've got the whole place to yourself.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I was talking to Jason Thinelli yesterday, and I really feel like Big Creek is like one of the most underrated uh, sections of the park. It is so beautiful out there along that watershed.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because you can go up Mount Sterling. Yeah, all the things out there.
Yeah,
And yeah. And anything you do from there is very hard. Good training for any mountain race.
it is. But man, some of those link ups between like Mount Cameron and Mount Sterling are just awesome.
So do you feel like that, like for hard rock training, do you feel like you can do adequate training in the Smokies, at least from a climbing standpoint for hard rock?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because like when training for a race, you want to try and match the same rate of climbing on your long runs. It'd be nice if you could do it every run, but not everybody lives like right next to the mountains or whatever. So, for example, Hellbender, was it 23,000 feet of climbing, right?
Yeah.
So, whenever you were to do a long run, you'd want to get 230 feet of climbing per mile, right? You do anything in the Smokies and go uphill, you're going to get that. Um, Hard Rock's 32,000 feet, so you need 320 feet per mile. You have to be more selective in what you choose, but I've got a lot of routes saved in Strava that I'm still planning to hit that are 300 feet per mile, some all the way up to 350 feet per mile. So yeah, absolutely. And I can make a 2 mile climb that's super steep. I can do a 8-10 mile climb that's really steady to mimic the course. Yeah, the terrain and the climbing and descending of the Smokies, I can look at the map and have fun and figure out a good route to mimic just about anything on the hard rock course, minus the scree fields and snow fields.
It's interesting because I didn't realize that, because I've hiked quite a bit of the Smokies, but mainly like the popular areas, obviously. Um, I've hiked more than I ran because I used to live up there. But I didn't realize it was that diverse from a climbing standpoint, meaning that you could get that much in such a short distance. Because I know that that's one of the big West Coast things that you hear is that a lot of the West Coast races have a lot more climbing at one
It's
time.
sustained. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sustained. That's
Mhm.
interesting. So
Yeah.
John, have you seen that type of climbing before, like out there,
Like, what do you mean?
like that sustained climbing that he's talking about, like the big super climbs?
Oh, for sure. Like, he brought up, for example, Boat Mountain. You can easily get a vertical kilometer there over what, like 5 or 6 miles.
Yeah. It's like under 7. I did that today, actually.
Yeah, pretty technical terrain too. I hit a
Mhm.
section of it this weekend, and it was about 90 degrees on one of the more exposed parts of it, and it was brutal.
Okay.
But yeah, you can get
Yeah,
that.
it was in gloves and a buff. It was cold today.
I know it's been wild. Like some of the temperature swings, like
Mhm.
70 or 80 degrees at the bottom. Once you get up about 5 or 6 thousand feet, it's like 30 or 40, and
Mhm.
just rainy and misty.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, because we have a frost warning tonight here in Middle Tennessee. It's going to be down into the 30s, I believe. And it was chilly all day today, but I mean it wasn't terrible. It was but it we woke up and it was chilly, and it seems like it was preparing us for what's coming tomorrow. So
Um, Real quick before we finish up talking about running the Smokies, because I'm sure our listeners are probably bored of me talking about it all the time. What's your favorite route that you've run in the Smokies outside of, say, Scar, which is the easy choice?
Mm. Does that have to be a certain distance? So favorite route?
Yeah.
Mm. There's one I will do from Cosby where I go up Low Gap to Mount Camareer, down the AT into Big Creek, up Mount Sterling, down to Big Creek, and it's there. Like it's 3 big climbs. You can get a view from Mount Camareer, one of the best views in the park, best place to see the sunrise. You go to Mount Sterling, you go up to the fire tower, 360 views. It's awesome. And then back. It's like 27 miles and 9,000 feet of gain. To your point of like, oh crap, yeah, you can get a lot of climbing out there. That's this it's like the exact same rate of climbing and descending as hard rock and just zoop, 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 yeah, up and down 3 times.
Yeah,
I like that.
we're gonna have to get Garrett out here and break him in since he has his sights on you, Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gonna need to run up and down that mountain quite a bit. I'm curious, as much running as you've done out there in the Smokies, have you ever been caught in like some crazy like weather conditions? It's like just blown in all of a sudden, and you were just like, "Oh goodness, this sucks." I'm
Hmm.
curious because like I know you put in some miles out there, and I know how crazy unpredictable the weather is out there. And I've wondered, I meant to ask you that like the last time I interviewed you, but like any crazy like stuff happened to you like when you were way up on elevation?
Many stories came to mind. I think the the one I'm thinking of right now. So I went up, I started from like Cates Cove, went up Gregory Bald, and then all the way over to Shuckstack Fire Tower, which is right off the AT. Fire Tower, you have a really cool view. You can see the route that Scar takes going north on the AT. It was summer day, very sunny, beautiful. And there was a giant rain cloud like right on the ridge in front of me. And you could see the rain. It's like one of the coolest pictures I've ever taken. And you could just see it's like an emoji almost. It's just like rain cloud plop down on the mountain amidst like a beautiful sunny day. And like I could hear the thunder. I was like, well, dang, I'm going that way. And I don't want to go the other way back because that's longer. We'll see what happens. It'll move through fast. And then as I start making my way, it gets dark and the temperature drops and it just starts pouring, lightning thunder immediately. And that was pretty scary. That was the closest I came to just like, oh crap, like anxiety, like heart beating fast, like what do I do? Like, but it's just like keep going. And then ending the like I had ran up a section of the trail that paralleled a creek. And then by the time I was running back down, because I finished down that trail, it was crazy how swollen it was and just how dark. It was like basically a flash flood from all the runoff and everything. But that was one that came to mind. Being up on LeConte, or it was like in the teens, single digit wind chills one time. That was not very fun. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that about Gregory Bald because me and a buddy were backpacking up there. And I can't remember the trail we were on. It was the trail down that where you start by a ranger station near, it's like where you're going near Fontana,
20 Mile
right?
Ranger Station. Mhm.
20 miles, that's it, exactly. And it's same scenario you're talking about. It was sunny, it was warm, it was very nice. And as we're walking up and we're getting close to the top, we look off, same thing. I mean, literally, it's almost like the same story. We look off and we see the clouds, and I look at my buddy and I'm like, can you pull your phone up to see if this is coming our way? Because somehow he always gets phone service regardless of where we are. And no, he couldn't. And so we just kept on going. And then literally the scariest near-death experience. I mean, it was the hardest rain. And it's crazy. You're right, how cold it gets before it rains on top of a mountain, and it was thundering and lightning, and we were like on a very exposed section of the trail, and we were literally just like praying that nothing crazy happened to us, because he was like, should we keep walking? And I'm like, no, we don't need to keep walking. I'm like, why would you just keep walking in an exposed area? I'm like, let's at least try to put ourselves around something else to where we're not the key item to strike by a bolt of lightning. You know what I'm saying? And I bet you it came down on us like that for a solid 15 minutes. And it was pretty freaking intense. So anyway, I had to ask because like was sure that you saw some crazy stuff. I know John always talks about how the weather conditions are wild up on the mountain. So other than, what is the one thing that you are worried? I don't want to say worried, but the one thing that you're having to plan for Hard Rock that is not that easy to plan for. Does that
Well,
make
it's the
sense?
altitude. Yeah. It's the altitude, right? It's between 9,000 to 14,000 feet the whole time. I forget the stat of what it averages the whole time. But yeah, it's the altitude, and you can't prepare for that unless you live at altitude, right above, like, even people who live at altitude, which I feel like the delineation for that would be like 6, 7,000 feet. When one says, I live at altitude, right? It's still almost double that, right? For Hard Rock. And
Mm-hmm.
then even those people going up to Hard Rock, they feel it, right? And I mean, there's nothing I can do besides get as fit as possible. And I'm going to get out there 2.5 weeks early, to slowly acclimate. And that's the big thing I'm going to do, to address that.
When we had Stephen Cornhouse on here, he lived right outside of Frozen Head, and he moved to Colorado, and he talked about how hard it was to get the acclimation,
Mhm.
because he was talking about being up at elevation there, and kind of feeling how tough it was, and how he definitely slow rolled doing everything he wanted to do because of the toughness of trying to be able to breathe. And I've never been that high, so I don't even know what it feels like. I mean, the highest I've been is wherever was Mount Mitchell. It's the
Mhm.
highest I ever, waiting for John and trying not to die in a hailstorm. So I mean, uh, that's the highest I've ever been. So anyway, before I pull off Hard Rock, y'all have any more questions?
Yeah, real quick, we have our special guest. So Ryan, I should have said something before. I need to start working this into our pre-show. She likes to come in and say hi every episode.
Nice.
So
Hey.
yeah, so that's Mr. Ryan. He is a really good runner and a really good coach. You want to tell him hi?
Hello.
No. All right. You ready to go to bed? Okay. Now she gets to go to bed. She can't go to sleep until she comes in and says goodnight. So
Nice. What's her name?
Larkin.
Larkin's her name. So
Ooh, I like
yeah,
that name.
which is a funny story. We couldn't agree on a name.
Mhm.
Oh, and she's gone. So we couldn't agree on a name for her. And my wife is a teacher, and so I just threw out her favorite student she's ever had. I said, well, what if we name her Larkin? And Larkin was a boy. He was a triplet, actually. And she said, you know what?
Mhm.
I like it. And we couldn't agree, and it just stuck. So
Yeah.
that's where her name came from. So appreciate you humoring me. She really does love to come in and say hi. She makes almost a weekly appearance now. So she
That's
likes to
awesome.
feel included. She's my mini me and my shadow. So but yeah, so you've already kind of touched on it. What steps are you doing now other than just getting as fit as possible? Yeah, I know that there's the acclimation tents and all those things. Being as science oriented as you are with your coaching background and all of that, what are your thoughts on those? What other little daily things can you kind of do to kind of just get ready? I mean, the oxygen masks don't work unless you're going to an actual place, like an actual facility, is my understanding of those. But what other little daily things, and how soon do you start? Because I know that there's a difference in your hydration once you get
Mhm.
up there. Are you starting that now, or what's your thought process kind of on that, and when all that starts for you?
So all those marginal gains, like the altitude tent and all that, like, they're expensive, and there's very specific protocols you have to follow with that for it to get a benefit. And so for the altitude tent, you need to spend like 16 to 20 hours a day in that altitude. Just sleeping in it isn't enough. And then so you're gonna sit in there, and then you're gonna atrophy because well, hey, who can sit in one place for that amount of time, right? And then, okay, you're going to sleep in it. Well, if you have a partner, you have animals, you think they're going to sleep in there with you and everything's going to be fine. Like that's another big thing with it. It's just there's a very specific protocol to follow, and it's very impractical for nearly everybody to get that dialed in for it. And then you talked about the hydration. So as you go up in altitude, your respiration rate at rest goes up. Just you are exhaling and inhaling more because you need more oxygen. So you're exhaling so much moisture that you need at least another liter of water. And that's at rest, right? So then imagine you're exercising. It's a very dry environment. It's the sweat's evaporating right off. It's just the hydration bit is really big, not only during the activity, but at rest as well. And then you need to drink more water, which then means you have to up your electrolytes in relation to that. And it's a lot of moving parts there. But on the electrolyte piece, I did get a sodium sweat test to like figure out that number and get precise with it. And then that's gonna help because I know that number. I've been training to hit that number and know it works because it's just when you go to altitude, every little thing gets exposed. You get behind on hydration, you go too hard, right? I'm sure y'all have heard it. Like once you go over the line, it takes forever to come back at altitude, right? It's kind of the same thing in the heat, any sort of extreme environmental factor. Just because your body's already on the limit, you're running, you're trying to eat, you're trying to thermoregulate, whatever. So the electrolyte piece, I would say that's one extra thing I've did that I went out of my way to do to get the sodium sweat test. Yeah, I'm trying
And
to
where
think.
did you go for that? Because I know Gatorade makes that patch, and I'm sure.
Mhm,
Well, Coop, I think has talked about it a
mhm,
while ago. Like, well,
mhm.
yeah, it could work. Did you go to a specific doctor for that, or because I am calling it what it is? I'm a heavy
Mhm,
sweater, so I
mhm,
should
mhm,
probably pay attention to that
mhm,
number more than I
mhm,
already do.
mhm, mhm.
So where would you say someone go to get the analytics, or I guess the numbers behind all that?
So Precision Hydration, which is a sports nutrition company, they have testing the technology that you just stick a little electrode sensor on you, stimulate your sweat gland. It extracts the sweat, and then within 10 minutes, it tells you your sodium sweat concentration. And it just depends on who has those. There's one in Nashville that you can find if you just go to Precision Hydration, find a testing center. They're scattered about throughout the country, but that's the best way to find your sodium sweat loss. And then just to figure out your sweat rate, you can do a sweat test,
Hmm.
right? Of
Yeah, I've done my fair share of those. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, right. And then like, oh, in 60 degrees, I'll lose 3 pounds or whatever. But then it's nice to add the sodium piece to that because it's maddening the the degree of variance between people. I encourage a lot of my athletes when I know they can go get the test done to get it done just because, hey, we know the number, we can be specific to it. Let's eliminate one potential problem. I've had people test as low as they lose 400 milligrams of sodium per 32 ounces. And I've had multiple people test all the way up to 2,000.
Good God.
Like that's so like, right? It's, and then you could, both of those people could follow the base recommendation of like 600 to 800 milligrams per 32 ounces. One's going to be over, they're going to get sick from too much sodium. And the other people, they're going to be way under, right? So, um, yeah, so that's what you do there to get the sodium sweat loss test. So yeah, you could make the drive to that. I made the 3 hour drive from Knoxville to go
Hmm.
to it to
Yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I keep meaning to do, and then it just never gets done. But I know in order for me to take the next step and be a better runner for a longer term, it's one of those things
Hmm.
that I just need to go do. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
before I wreck myself more than I already have. So,
Yeah.
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 Um,
So I guess let's slide into the coaching a little bit. So like you were saying when I first spoke to you, you were just kind of getting started on that, and now you said you're wide open with it. So I take it you're pretty busy with that now.
Yes, it is. It is the full-time job. And man, it's probably three, like I was in that transition period last time we talked in December 2021, and just working my athlete load up was probably until April that it was like full-time load. So it took like 3 or 4 months. And then yeah, for the past 2.5 years, it's been the full-time job. I think can't remember if I said it when the recording started or we were saying it before, but yeah, so grateful and thankful that I can say it's my full-time job. It's pretty cool.
What's your favorite part about it?
Man, just working with people, and it's they're very passionate about it, and they have big goals, and everybody's busy. Doesn't matter if they're a 25-year-old with no kids or the 40-year-old with 3 kids, and they are professor of health or whatever. Everybody's busy, and being able to work with a person, be like, hey, what are you fired up about? Okay, cool. You want to go do the bear? All right, sweet. Let's figure out a plan, make the most of your time. So you, when you think about running, it's not stressful, wondering, are you doing the right thing? Are you having to spend a bunch of time looking into, well, I heard this thing about I should be fat adapted, and I heard this thing that I need to eat 500 calories an hour, right? Like being able to help people just, hey, when you go run, this is what you do. I'm here to be the resource. So running can be a joy, and figure out how to best balance it within your busy life. And so, and then you're confident in your training, you get to the start line. It's like, hey, let's go have fun. Let's do this thing that I've been trying so hard for. Just helping people figure out how to get prepared for these events and make sure running is fun, because that's why we do it, right? And then I think, I'm sure for all of us at some point, and it still is, like it does become stressful trying to fit it in, wondering if we're doing the right thing and all that.
What's been the hardest part? I mean, I'm sure it's when you spend so much time with an athlete and then they get to their A race and it doesn't go as planned.
Yeah.
Do you do you almost take that personally?
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. Yeah, that just happened this weekend. Having a hard time shaking actually, because yeah, been working with this athlete for 2 years, and just this example of training been going well, and then just the race did not go well, and then I'm racking my brain looking back through training peaks, like what could I have done better? And yeah, definitely take it personal, because they take it personal, right? They're entrusting the coach to get them most prepared and fit, and sometimes things go wrong on race day, right? But when it does not go as planned, yeah, I hate it. I want to figure it out and get better, right? I hate it for them, you know.
mhm. Sounds like you were a real problem solver. Have you always been a problem solver? Like, and that's kind of why you maybe gravitated towards, okay, here's the problem, here's how we
Mm,
solve it as a
I think
coach.
so. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like my brain works and seeing things, and yeah, put the pieces together, and like let's get from point A to point B as efficient, as simple as possible, with not overcomplicating it and just organizing things. I like organization. So that, yeah, it's like, right, I emailed you like, hey, we have an outline for this thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Sometimes, most
Yeah,
times, no, but
yeah,
sometimes.
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
we're a freestyling type of a bunch of people. I will say this much: I did get to run with one of your athletes this weekend that was successful. Julie Height
Mhm.
did a fantastic job at the half marathon this weekend. I mean, she is so freaking strong, and I when she walked up, I was like, well, there goes the women's field right there. I mean, just,
Look, let's be honest,
she,
Jason. Your thought was there goes the field.
well, I mean, Jason McVeigh was there, so I knew that there was going to be, I knew it was going to be one or the other, but I knew whoever didn't win, the other one was going to come in second, because both of them are just top notch athletes. But yeah, she's a man. She's running Cruel Jewel, I think. That's crazy.
Yeah, she's doing the 50 mile. What's that? Three or 4 weeks now. But yeah, I love Julie. I've been working with Julie since she's one of my first athletes to start working with, actually, in 2017 or 2018, when I was coaching mostly local people there in Nashville when I lived in Nashville. But yeah.
She's outstanding. But yeah, she did good. So I mean, there's your good story this weekend, right?
Now, do
So
you have a coach that you kind of model your coaching philosophy after? Or is there someone maybe that you grew up with that was a coach for you? Like, I appreciate everything this guy did this way, and I want to emulate that in my own style. And who's your role model for that?
That would be Coach Caldwell. He was my high school baseball coach, and so many great stories of that man. But like, if I could distill it down simply, it's like what made him a great coach and a great human, a mentor, is that he was always honest. He didn't sugarcoat things. He spoke to you in an honest way, like from an adult to a teenager. He didn't try to sugarcoat things or be sensitive or whatever. He shot it to you straight. He talked to you like an adult. Um, and his honesty was big. And like he believed in you, like he truly believed in you, and like would find the talent in each player and bring it out of them, right? Because like we're all self-aware of what our strengths and weaknesses are, and we can identify those in other people, especially in a team setting. But he did a really good job of that, and um, seeing what your strengths were, and like bringing that out in you, and just, yeah, being honest, and the believing part, like that's pretty cool. And so like I try to model it on that, like be honest with your athletes, don't talk down to them, don't sugarcoat it, be direct and honest. Yeah, I'm there to encourage them, of course, but I don't want to sugarcoat things and make them think everything's going to be okay, right? And try to instill like, hey, like this is your goal. Hey, is it realistic or not? We'll talk about that. But then also, like, once we've determined that, I believe you can do it. Yeah.
so I guess one question I had is, and it's a very general question, and it's probably not a good question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you, Garrett? No. So
You have good questions, Jason. There's no such thing as a bad question.
you know what? No, I don't. But anyway, uh, is there one thing that people do wrong more than anything else, that when you coach people, right? And everybody, when they're laying out like how they do things, is there like one specific characteristic that is like a bad habit that a lot of people you come across do? I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, people don't give themselves enough time for the big A goal. I'm just
So
like,
they
oh, I want to do a 50 miler. Well, have you did a 50K yet? No. And you want to do this 50 miler in 8 weeks? Give yourself more time. There's races every weekend and they're going to be there. Just that's the biggest thing. People don't give themselves enough time, or it's always this magical 8 to 10 week window of somebody who maybe they run 3 times a week, and then they realize like, oh, that race I signed up for is 8 to 10 weeks away. I need to start training now. And then it's like, no, like give yourself more time. It's going to be a more enjoyable experience. You're not going to have to cram for the test and just do the bare minimum to get by because we don't want you injured and all that. Yeah, give yourself more time. If you want to do a 100 miler, cool. Give yourself 2 years. Learn, like, get good at a 50K. Boom. Get good at a 50 mile. Do a couple of those. So when you get to that big goal, like maybe you watched um a UTMB video, right, on YouTube, because they're all there, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I want to go do that race. It's like, okay, like make that like a 4 or 5 year plan. Do a lot of other hard races and train and build up that fitness. So when you do go to this thing that lit your fire, you can make the most of it and you're not just struggling and overwhelmed with the distance, the the demands, whatever it is.
That's interesting because now you saying that, that makes a ton of sense, that that is a common mistake because like I know people, and I'm not going to say their name, but they like sign up for races, and I'm like, when is it? And they're like, oh, it's in 3 months. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like I
Mhm.
look at what they're running now, and I'm thinking, how are you going to
You need more than
do
three
that?
months.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And I mean, it's just like for me, who's been injured now for an eternity. Now I'm finally running again. I actually got out to Percy Warner today. And so in my mind, I'm almost to the point where I almost feel like I almost maybe need to take the rest of the year just to get myself caught back up physically and mentally before I try to jump into anything crazy and that is going to take a heavy commitment. Just from the standpoint of I feel like that's the reason why I got hurt to begin with, was because I'd signed up for this race and my training, I went from like 0 to 100 like that and built up all this overuse on my foot, didn't realize it, right? And it was like a nurse was telling me, who I run with. She goes, you know, your body is no different than like a belt on your car, right? She goes, it's going to keep wearing and wearing and wearing. And she goes, everything is going to be good. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The belt's going to break. And she goes, that's exactly what happened to you. And so I think you hit on something big. So anybody listening to this race, I mean this podcast, do not sign up for a 50-mile race with 8 weeks running 3 times a week.
It's the all or nothing mindset. This sport attracts that very much so. And use that example like, oh, I want to do a 100 miler. What other races have you did? You want to do it in a year? And like I've finally learned how to identify this all or nothing mindset and whenever I get connected with a potential athlete to work with and am formulating a better strategy to lay out and be like, hey, sure, we can do this, but here are the consequences. Um, you could get injured, hobble through it, and then you're not running. You try to do too much, you're injured, boom, and then it's literally all or nothing. Yeah.
It's interesting.
So
I,
let's say
I
you're having that conversation with someone. How do you have that? Like you I don't want to say you're dashing their hopes and dreams,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you're being realistic at the same
Hmm.
time and saying, yeah, you can do that. So how does that let's role play that, if you will. I've got
Yeah,
a
so
race coming up in
basically,
October.
I was about to say, so basically, Garrett has his sights set on the UA
Yeah.
100.
Yeah, we'll do
It's
that.
April of
We'll role play that.
2024. He's
No.
looking at summer of 25 as a possibility for this race.
This is good. This is a long ways out. Okay, this is nice. Have you did a 100 miler before?
Yes. Finished
Okay,
one, DNF the other one because of
okay.
some stupid mistakes that I made, but it's okay.
But
So,
that's part of it. It's part of the fun,
um,
part of the frustration.
right,
Uh,
right.
so all right, so you got that. All right, you're already giving yourself 12 months, I guess like 15, 16 months. Um, yeah. I would have
Yeah.
already like stalked your ultra sign up in Strava also to go over all of this.
Well,
Let's,
okay. So
yeah.
you would have seen 0 races last year because
Okay,
last
that's
year was
fine.
not a race year.
Uh-huh.
It was my wife and I are both workaholics. So it
Mm,
was a work a lot to
mm,
get my daughter to Disney for her 5th birthday and
nice.
then had a race. And then my brother-in-law decided he wanted to get married that same weekend. So there goes
Mm-hmm.
that race. So it was just
Mm-hmm.
nothing ever lined up last year. So it was very much just a run when you can. And that wasn't very often. And now I'm back working through some things here and I've got my eyes set on a 15 month a race 15 months away. So,
Mhm.
is that enough time, having done a 100-miler before, a 50-miler before, a handful of 100Ks, a couple 24 hours in the past, we'll say 4 years? Do I have enough base that there's a solid foundation? We just need to put the puzzle pieces together there.
All that race experience, yes, but in terms of answering the base question, I would want to look at your Strava and see where you're at. Because yeah, all that race experience, yes, there is a base there, but what have you been doing in the past 6 months, right? Because it is 15 months from now. But
Mhm.
then are you going to have to spend the next 3 months building the base, right? Or are you already in a spot where you can start training? And I would also say to this, like, okay, the sign up for that race is probably not till January. Let's pick out something similar in the fall of a 50-mile distance, train for it, see how it goes. And if the training goes well and the race goes well, that's crossing off a box that like, okay, hey, this is a logical stepping stone towards this massive race with these extreme demands. That's how I'd lay it out.
Good deal.
So what would be so what would be a 50-mile race comparable to you running?
Right? There's not one.
Okay, I was
Like, well,
like,
yeah, like
Well, there is one.
that's the
It's called
most
the Ouray 50.
yeah,
Like,
right, right. Yeah. I would say, yeah. So I would say do Scar. That's the first one
Or
I can
like
think of.
in this area, Looking
Yeah.
Glass would probably be a good plus.
Yes.
Well, I
Uh-huh.
think that's what, November.
Yeah, yeah, weekend before Thanksgiving. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's an extreme example, right? There's not a lot of races like that outside of the the little sibling race, the 50 miler. But yeah, do Scar, especially something that's self-supported. That's really going to test your mental and physical preparation. Yes, Looking Glass is another perfect one.
wow. So Scar would be a good way to gauge yourself for a race like that.
Hmm.
That tells you how hard Scar is right there, folks.
Yeah, and it's so funny when you bring that up too, because last week I had six
Yeah, you were out
people
there
from
helping
North
people.
Carolina. I was crewing for SCAR.
Hmm.
Of those six, they were all very strong runners. Only one of them went the full distance. And this was in good weather too. So definitely demanding. I know we're starting to run long on time here, but one question while we're still on the topic of coaching, I'd like to ask is just about the mental side of training. Do you have any strategies that you like to recommend for that aspect?
I like to have an ongoing dialogue with the mental strategies. Like I don't have a Google Doc cheat sheet I share with them or whatever. I like to so love it when the athlete leaves really good post-activity feedback and training peaks. That allows both of us, athlete and coach, to get the most out of it. So for example, let's say barely got out the door today. Kid woke me up at 3 a.m. Work went long, but I know it's supposed to be an hour and a half, but I got 45 minutes in. It's like, okay, those are big mental wins, right? And just giving them the feedback of like, hey man, that's like mile 60 of a 100-miler. And you just stumbled in, you got off course for a mile, you're exhausted, but you got up and kept going. It wasn't pretty, but you did it. And like relaying things like that, of just trying to make them realize when they are mentally succeeding and how it can parallel to another setting in training or ultra. And then one little acronym I came up with for a problem solving strategy is SOS. So the S is subjective. So whatever happens, whine, cry, curse, whatever. You have to get the raw subjective emotion out before you can process and even try to problem solve. Like, don't just try to be stoic because you'll eventually explode. And then, oh, objective. Okay, now be objective. You've got the raw emotion out. You gave yourself 2 minutes, 10 minutes. It's out there. Now try to identify like, why is your stomach hurting? Oh, you ran out of water, you're a mile from the aid station, you're going to walk it in and then you're going to get water, right? You just need to slow down. try to be objective, identify, and then the S is solve, and just go from there. And just simplifying it, something like that, and throwing that out there so they're aware of it. And again, relaying that back to whenever they have mentioned something in training, or if there's something an athlete is really nervous about with a race coming up, environmental demand, something about the course, the start time, distance between aid station, like, okay, let's replicate that in training so you can become familiar with it, and it takes away that anxiety of the unknown.
Nick,
That's awesome.
you mentioned feedback. What is your ideal feedback that you could receive? Is it, this is how this felt, this is how the day went, this is the nutrition I took, this is how much water I drank? Like, in what is picture perfect feedback for you?
Kind of like before, like going into the workout, how'd you feel? Like, what was your stress level? Were you super tired from, yeah, kids, family, work? Just get a brief on that, because that matters. Then during the workout, obviously, how did it go? How did you feel? Were you happy with how it went? Are you disappointed with how it went? And then especially, yeah, if it's a long run or we're working on nutrition, yes, list out your nutrition, please, so we can look at the numbers, tie it back to how you felt or how you performed, and be like, oh, we're doing good, or we need to keep working on it and fix it. So kind of like, yeah, a pre, during, and then post. Because the big thing with athletes, I was saying, like, how do you think it went? A lot of times we don't think something went well, but then you can see in the data, like, hey, actually, no. Like, your normalized grade pace on these climbs was just as good as it was 2 weeks ago when you were fresh. Like, you're fine. Yeah. You're very tired. You're supposed to be tired from fatigue of training or life or whatever. But yeah, trying to also reorient them of we are all our own worst critic, right? Trying to get them out of that.
Got it.
Well, there you go. I think we probably need to pull the plug. So, because John and Ryne are both an hour ahead of us, and Garrett and I are still sitting at 8:30. So we're still good.
I need to get on Larkin's bedtime, man. I want to go. I want to be in bed by 9 Eastern. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
she's
know
got
I'm
a
saying it's close to bedtime.
Yeah.
yeah, she's got a big day tomorrow. She needs to go to bed. So
So, I guess before we sign out, where can people find out about your coaching services?
I guess maybe the easiest thing would be like through Instagram, direct message through there. My Instagram account is Ryne1Anderson. My first name spelled Ryne, or email randerson@trainride.com. Yeah.
There you go. Well, it has been a pleasure as always, sir. We always enjoy talking to you. So thank you for taking time out to speak with us tonight. Look him up, folks. But that is it for this evening, and we will see you later. Everybody have a great evening.